For 15 years, I built a fortune and destroyed everything that tried to soften my heart, until she walked into my office, looked me in the eye, and dared to tell me I was wrong about love. I remember that moment like it happened yesterday. The way her heels clicked against my marble floor with purpose, not intimidation. The way she refused to break eye contact when I introduced myself. Most people look down when shaking the hand of a billionaire. Not her. She held my gaze and smiled like she knew something I didn't. That day changed everything. Up until then, I had convinced myself that success and emotion couldn't coexist, that caring was a liability. I had fired brilliant minds for getting too comfortable, ended partnerships the moment sentiment crept in, and built my entire empire on the principle that feelings had no place in business. My mentor always said, "The moment you start caring about people over profit, you've already lost." I lived by those words for a decade and a half, but when Aisha Williams walked through my door, something shifted. She brought light into a room I'd painted black years ago. This is a story about how one woman changed everything I thought I knew about life. Stay until the end to learn the 3 life lessons that transformed my billion-dollar empire. People ask me all the time, "How did you build your first billion?" The answer's simple. I learned early that emotions are expensive. My father abandoned us when I was 8, left my mother with 3 kids and a mountain of debt. I watched her cry herself to sleep every night, and I decided right then that love was a luxury I couldn't afford. While other kids played, I sold candy bars door to door. At 16, I flipped my first car. By 22, I had my first real estate deal. I built my empire the way a warrior prepares for battle, with calculated precision and zero attachment. Every day started at 4 a.m. with a cold shower and a reminder, feelings are weakness. I fired employees for requesting time off for family emergencies. I bought out companies not to grow them, but to strip them for parts. I dated women who understood that love was a transaction, nothing more. My penthouse was pristine because no one stayed long enough to mess it up. The irony is, success came easily when I treated everything like a chess game. I could read markets like novels, predict trends before they happened, and negotiate deals while others were still fumbling with their proposals. My reputation preceded me, the man who could turn anything into gold but had a heart of ice. Partners whispered about my lack of empathy. They said I looked at people the way a surgeon looks at bodies, useful parts to be examined and utilized. By 40, I had everything I'd ever wanted: multiple homes, private jets, a company that generated millions daily. Yet every morning, I stared at my reflection in the mirror and felt nothing. The emptiness behind the success was my closest companion. I'd wake up in silk sheets, surrounded by luxury, with a crushing weight in my chest that no amount of money could lift. That's when I convinced myself that feeling nothing was better than feeling pain. I'd traded vulnerability for vitality, and it seemed like a fair exchange, until the day everything changed with one simple question from a woman who refused to believe my carefully constructed philosophy. She didn't care about my wealth or reputation. When I first posted the job listing for an executive consultant, I wanted someone who wouldn't question my methods. I'd interviewed 12 candidates that week, all polished, all eager to please, all forgettable. Then Aisha Williams walked in. She wore a navy blue suit that commanded respect without trying too hard, carried herself with the confidence of someone who'd earned every step she'd taken. I offered her a ridiculous salary. She countered that she wouldn't take the job unless I listened to her ideas about restructuring my company's ethical practices. "You do realize you're speaking to the person who would be signing your paychecks?" I asked, amused by her audacity. She leaned forward, not backing down. "And you do realize that unlimited wealth means nothing if you can't sleep at night?" Our first conflict came during her second week. I was about to terminate 50 employees in our Nevada division to boost quarterly profits. She stormed into my office without knocking. "You can't do this," she said, throwing the termination paperwork on my desk. These people have families, mortgages, dreams. We can achieve the same numbers by restructuring overtime and cutting unnecessary executive bonuses. I wanted to fire her on the spot, but her alternative plan, which I grudgingly reviewed, was brilliant. Instead of cutting staff, she proposed eliminating my private jet budget for entertainment purposes, reducing wasteful meetings, and implementing performance-based raises. The numbers matched my targets perfectly. That's when I realized this woman was dangerous. She made me see my business through a lens I'd rejected years ago: humanity. Every morning, she'd walk into my office with coffee, 1 sugar, no cream, exactly how I liked it, and proceed to challenge everything I believed. She questioned why I never visited our retail locations, why I didn't know employees' names, why I avoided charity functions. You think showing weakness invites exploitation, she'd say, but showing strength without compassion invites rebellion. Her arguments were logical, data-driven, and infuriatingly reasonable. I kept her around because she was invaluable. I just didn't realize yet how completely she would unravel the walls I'd spent decades building around my heart. Our breakthrough came during the Hamilton acquisition project, a hostile takeover that would either make or break our fourth quarter targets. For 6 weeks, we worked 18-hour days, surviving on coffee and determination. That's when I started noticing things about her that had nothing to do with business. The way she drummed her pen against her notepad when thinking, how she always brought extra food for the late-night security staff, the gentle way she spoke to maintenance workers, like they mattered just as much as board members. One Tuesday night, around 2 a.m., I made a comment about necessary casualties in business. She slammed her laptop shut. Do you ever think about the real people behind your casualties? I come from necessity. My mother cleaned floors in buildings like this one, working 2 jobs so I could have textbooks. I watched her dignity remain intact while people like you walked past her like she was furniture. Her words hit me like ice water. For the first time in years, I felt something crack inside my chest. That weekend, she dragged me to her old neighborhood in South Atlanta. Not willingly, it was supposedly to review a potential investment property. But standing on that cracked sidewalk, watching her interact with people who still remembered her from childhood, I saw wealth measured differently. Nobody there asked about my stock portfolio. Instead, Mr. Johnson from the corner store talked about how Aisha's mother used to give him free medical advice. Mrs. Thompson from apartment 4B proudly showed me photos of Aisha winning spelling bees and debate tournaments. These people had invested in her with love, not money. That night, I watched her lead a financial literacy workshop in the community center where she'd once dreamed of escape. She taught for free what I charged corporations thousands for. After everyone left, we sat on the steps, and she told me about growing up poor, but never feeling poor. My mother always said, "You can't control your circumstances, but you can control your response." She taught me that success without service is just greed with good PR. I'd never heard someone articulate what I'd been missing so clearly. Something shifted that night as I realized everything I thought made me strong was actually keeping me isolated, and every wall I'd built was a prison of my own making. The transformation started subtly, like morning light creeping through blackout curtains I'd had for years. Aisha began changing my company policies, one conversation at a time, and each change revealed something I'd buried long ago. First, it was the parental leave policy. I'd never considered it important until she presented data showing how employee retention and productivity increased dramatically when we supported families. "You're treating people like machines," she said during a Monday morning meeting. "Even machines need maintenance." I found myself in places I'd avoided for years, visiting production floors, learning employees' names, understanding their struggles. David Chen, a warehouse supervisor, broke down when I personally thanked him for 20 years of service. I realized I'd never acknowledged him before. though he'd been crucial to our operation since year one. Aisha stood behind me, a quiet smile on her face, as she watched me reconnect with my own humanity. But the real shift happened when I started seeing business success through her eyes. Under her influence, we launched the Second Chance initiative, offering entry-level positions to formerly incarcerated individuals. I opposed it at first, too risky, too soft. But 6 months later, many of these employees became our most loyal workers. Marcus, one of our first hires, eventually became a team leader. He told me, "Mr. Johnson, you gave me back my dignity. My kids can be proud of their father again." Every day brought new revelations. I learned that my philanthropy had been performative, big checks to avoid engagement. Aisha convinced me to start actually showing up. We spent Saturdays at food banks, not writing checks, but actually serving meals. I touched people's hands, looked into their eyes, and saw stories written in their faces. The emptiness in my chest began filling with something I couldn't name yet. My business metrics improved paradoxically. The more I cared, the better we performed. Employee satisfaction scores hit record highs. Customer loyalty strengthened. Profit margins grew as waste decreased and innovation flourished. My board of directors was baffled but pleased. Even hard-nosed investors admitted our new approach was brilliant. Late one evening, reviewing quarterly reports that exceeded all projections, Aisha walked into my office. "You've changed," she said simply. For the first time, I didn't deflect or make a sarcastic comment. Instead, I admitted something terrifying. "You scare me. Not because you're challenging my business practices, but because you're making me feel things I've pretended don't exist." That night, as she packed up to leave, I did something I hadn't done in 15 years. I asked someone to stay, not for a deal or negotiation, but because I simply wanted their company. She turned at the doorway, her eyes reflecting surprise and something else. Hope, maybe. "Tomorrow we're building something better than an empire," she said quietly. "We're building a legacy." I finally understood the difference. Empires crumble, but love multiplies. The transformation wasn't just professional, it was profound and personal. For the first time in decades, I allowed myself to simply be. Loving Aisha didn't weaken me. It amplified everything that was already inside, but suppressed. Together, we revolutionized my company's very foundation. We established profit-sharing programs, invested in employee development, and built affordable housing for our workers. My fortune didn't shrink, it grew by 30% that year. Our relationship evolved naturally, like water finding its way. I proposed to her not with diamonds and champagne, but in the very conference room where we'd first clashed. "You walked in here telling me I was wrong about everything." "You were right," I said, holding her hand. "I want to spend my life proving you're still right." She laughed and cried at the same time, and I realized that vulnerability was strength in its purest form. We merged our lives as seamlessly as we'd merged our visions for the company. Every morning, we still had our coffee meetings, but now they included laughter, shared dreams, and the occasional kiss across the conference table. Our wedding was simple, a beach ceremony with close friends and family, including many employees who'd become like family. When I looked into her eyes as we exchanged vows, I understood that the greatest merger of my life wasn't corporate, it was this union of hearts. 3 years later, as I stood in our nursery, painting the walls yellow while Aisha directed operations from her armchair, even pregnancy couldn't slow her down, I marveled at the irony. The man who once believed love would destroy him had discovered that love was the foundation of everything he'd truly wanted to build. My empire expanded, my happiness multiplied, and my heart, once locked away, now beat with purpose beyond profit. Love hadn't taken anything from me. It had given me everything I'd been missing.